Okay, the Committee on Finance will come to order. We'll continue our informational briefings, and today we have the Department of Education. Please.
Good morning, Chair Yamashita, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and representatives. Keith Hayashi, Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to share an overview of the Department of Education's biennium budget request. With me today are Board of Education member Bill Arakaki, Deputy Superintendents Heidi Armstrong, Tammy Owadamari-Chan, and Kurt Otoguro, along with our team of Assistant Superintendents who are available to answer any specific questions committee members may have. At our core, we support students and learning. The Department of Education is charged with ensuring that every student, regardless of their abilities or socioeconomic status, is prepared to be successful for life after high school, on whatever path they choose, whether it's college or other post-secondary training, directly into the workforce, or military service. Our budget request aligns with and supports our ability to carry out this important mission by seeking predictable and reliable funding for our schools and system. Stabilizing the base budget for public education will support our strategic efforts to meet student needs throughout their pre-K through 12 journey. On slide 4, this is data that you're all familiar with. It speaks to the enormity of the responsibilities we have to educate all students and the human resources needed to accomplish this well. On the next slide, we know that COVID disrupted student learning and impacted the social and emotional well-being of many of our students. Thanks to our dedicated employees, along with the continued support of the legislature and federal pandemic funding, the department was able to successfully reopen all of our schools for in-person learning for the 2021 to 22 school year, and again this year. The priorities highlighted on this slide helped us transition during the pandemic and allowed us to stay focused on supporting our students. In recognition of that disruption, the federal government made huge investments in public education nationwide during the pandemic by providing emergency relief funding, which are all very appreciative for. The largest pot, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER 3, was intended to stabilize our organization to the benefit of students, staff, and the state, and to respond to the detrimental effects on student learning. Outlined on this slide are the 4 strategies the department identified for this recovery effort: healthy habits, healthy schools; action-oriented data decision-making; responsive capacity building; and effective academic practices. Aligned to these strategies, some of our targeted supports under ESSER include: number 1, summer school. We expanded and provided free summer school for all students. Number 2, after-school programs. We expanded access to after-school programs and provided subsidies to offset the cost of A+ for families. And number 3, school-based health services. We expanded the Hawaii Keiki program that provides school-based health services. Each of our 15 complex areas now has an advanced practice registered nurse, or APRN. Each of our 41 complexes has a registered nurse, and there is a school health aide at every school. By leveraging ESSER funds to counter the effects of the pandemic, along with the hard work of our teachers and staff, I'm happy to share that our strategies are producing results for students. On slide 7, one example is our academic performance for the 2021 to 22 school year, which was our first full year of in-person learning during COVID. As you can see on this slide, our overall proficiency level for English language arts was the highest amongst 11 states reporting scores on our statewide assessment. We used a smarter balance assessment which is used by 14 states and territories to assess academic proficiency and is an indicator of college and career readiness. Our overall proficiency level for mathematics, meanwhile, was near the highest performing states on this test. While we still have more to do to return to pre-pandemic achievement levels in Hawaii, and for every student to achieve proficiency, these results show that Hawaii fared well compared to many other states last year. While last year's student attendance was challenged by COVID-driven absences, the state assessment results reflect student performance broadly in the tested grades, grades 3 to 8, and 11. Student participation rates in the statewide assessments were 95% for English language arts, 96% for mathematics, and 94% for science. On slide 8, Hawaii students' performance on the National Assessment of Education Progress, represented here by grade 4 reading results, confirmed our own assessment using the Smarter Balance assessment that was on the prior slide. The NAEP shows how Hawaii performs in comparison to all other states in math and in reading. The results show that our students fared better than most states in last year's return to in-person learning. While the nation and most states showed drops across the board, Hawaii's 4th and 8th grade students held steady on 3 of 4 NAEP assessments. This slide shows a long, steady trend of improvement for Hawaii's 4th graders reading compared with the national average. So while we are not where we want to be for our students, we are definitely making progress. And last year's results to in-person learning yielded measurable results. On slide 9, I applaud the legislature for its continued funding for public education. And you can see that our per pupil funding exceeds the US average. However, when comparing our expenditures with states that performed higher than us on the recent 4th grade NAEP, we find that 5 of 7 higher performing states spent more per pupil than Hawaii in 2018 to 2019. Although we are very encouraged by the progress being made, and we are working diligently to sustain and accelerate this momentum, we know that full recovery and achievement above pre-pandemic levels will take time and investment. Experts are predicting that students' academic recovery will take at least 3 years for elementary students and longer for secondary students. But we are trying our best to accelerate this recovery. To help accelerate our efforts and move our entire system forward, we are focusing our attention on what we are calling high-level initiatives. These targeted areas that we know we need to dedicate resources to in order to best support our students, areas like vulnerable populations. The pandemic exacerbated achievement gaps for our most vulnerable students. We need to provide differentiated and targeted support in the classroom, school, and community to improve educational outcomes for student groups, including our Pacific Islander and Native Hawaiian students, English learners, and students with disabilities. Another area, workforce. We need to ensure that we're graduating students who are workforce ready and can earn a living wage and thrive here in Hawaii. Our students deserve opportunities to explore viable career pathways and obtain skills and experiences necessary to better position themselves as top candidates of current and emerging industries in Hawaii. Another focus area, secondary mathematics. We need to strengthen our math concepts that our students need to be successful in middle and high school, as well as in their post-secondary endeavors. The associated budget requests for these initiatives are presented in later slide. All of our work is grounded in our 4 statewide strategies referenced earlier, which all of our schools are already implementing. On slide 12, this chart provides context for the magnitude of the board-approved general fund biennial budget request in relation to the current fiscal year appropriation. The first bar on the left represents the current year. general fund appropriation. And the second and third bars represent the department's base budget in blue and the department's budget request in orange for the first and second year of the biennium. The governor's budget request, $55.8 million in the first fiscal year, is a portion of the orange bar. If the department's budget requests were fully funded for the biennium, the department's budget would still be less than the current year's appropriation. On slide 14, although much less than the legislatively appropriated general funds, federal funds continue to play an important role providing supplemental supports for our students. Congress only recently passed its omnibus budget bill for federal fiscal year 22 to 23. We expect the funding to be fairly consistent with prior years, but we are awaiting notification about the amount that Hawaii will receive, and we'll share that information with you when it's available. ESSER and other coronavirus relief funds have been tremendously successful by providing fiscal stability when state revenues faltered early on in the pandemic. These funds also allow the department to respond to immediate pandemic impacts. For example, we fed children with our Grab and Go food program. We connected our students via laptops to support distance learning. We purchased sanitation supplies and equipment. The board and department also prioritize programs to support in-person learning, accelerate learning, support social-emotional well-being, and address health and safety needs. We continue to invest in free summer school for all public school students, out-of-school time, such as A+, Hawaii Keiki nursing services, and providing $159 million in direct funding to the complex areas to support school needs specific to their communities. The department is transparent and accountable for the federal ESSER funds. We post monthly expenditure reports on our public website. Each monthly report covers over 2 years of allocations, expenditures, and encumbrances, broken down by activity. A new national report from Future Ed, a think tank at Georgetown University, showed that Hawaii ranked second amongst all states in spending its ESSER funding as of September 30th, 2022. As instructed, we have included these links on slide 18 to the annual produced non-general fund report. On slide 20, it details our general fund budget request for fiscal year 24. This table summarizes by EDN how our general fund budget proposal for fiscal year 24 moves from the current fiscal year, removes non-recurring funds in the next column, and adds collective bargaining costs. Then we show the department's board-approved request totals, followed by the proposed total general fund appropriation level. I would note that this slide represents the department's BOE-approved requests, which includes the $55.8 million in new requests that are part of the governor's budget. Of the BOE's budget requests, 78% are in EDN 100, 150, and 400, which are resources directly for schools. The fiscal year 25 proposed budget is a little higher. It includes funding to continue some supports that will be ESSER funded through the end of this fiscal year, but are important supports to accelerate learning from pandemic impacts. On slide 22, there's often a question about whether schools are receiving an appropriate share of the budget. This graph shows that Hawaii's per pupil expenditures for instruction, in red, are higher than the national average. This reflects the commitment of the legislature to focus its investment in instruction at a rate that outpaces the national average. This graph also shows that our non-school administrative expenditures, in yellow, are lower than the national average. Our administrative expenditures have consistently been amongst the lowest in the nation. As mentioned earlier, helping our students recover from pandemic impacts will extend beyond the biennium. And the future of our children and our state depends on improved outcomes from our public education system. This slide summarizes the department's request budget by category. The high leverage initiatives, which we touched on earlier in the presentation, consist of strategic initiatives for school and system improvements. These initiatives aim to address long-standing challenges and needs for our students and community. We're advocating for the governor to include these requests in his amended budget. The high leverage requests, as discussed earlier in this presentation, are for vulnerable students, workforce readiness, secondary mathematics, leadership development, K-12 alignment, middle level education, teacher recruitment, and other resources to support our priority initiatives. Toward the bottom, the budget requests are organized by the governor's budget priorities, including continuation of programs funded by specific appropriations, and health and safety court order of federal mandate requirements. As requested by the Finance Director's recent memorandum, yesterday we formally transmitted the department's request to the Department of Budget and Finance. The Finance Director's memorandum, 23-01, identified education as one of the governor's priorities. So we're optimistic that the Green administration will consider these requests for its financial plan. We humbly ask for the opportunity to work with the chairs and committees to consider the department's requests as well. Slide 24, the CIP request represents the amount in the governor's budget for the department. The categories listed in this CIP budget request remains consistent with categories used over the last 2 years. The largest request in fiscal year 24 is in the capacity category for new schools and to expand current schools, including more classrooms and land acquisition. Two other large categories are: first, deferred maintenance, which includes building and site repair and maintenance, electrical and infrastructure improvements, and hazardous materials remediation. And second, federal grants, which provide matching funds to renovate military impacted schools. The other supports include other categories include support. This is for school improvements, including athletic facilities and electrical upgrades. Compliance. This includes compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title IX. Health and safety. Instructional, which supports facilities for 21st century learning opportunities, such as career and technical education, and STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the Office of Information Technology Services, which supports the department's technology infrastructure, including network equipment and bell and paging systems. Within these categories, projects will be selected from the prioritized list to the Board of Education. The department is excited about the future of education and moving beyond the COVID crisis. We are proud of the efforts of our teachers, administrators, and staff across our tri-level system who prevented our state from seeing some of the drastic drops in achievement that occurred across the nation. And we are looking to build on that foundation with our high leverage initiatives to continue to propel our state forward. Thank you for this opportunity to share, and thank you for your continued support, which is so critical to the success of our public education system and our students, employees, and partners statewide. My team and I are standing by for any questions regarding our budget requests. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Members, we're open to questions. Okay, Representative Poipoi.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. My question is in regard to per pupil funding, representing a very rural district. That funding mechanism does present some unique challenges for rural schools. So I'm wondering if in this budget there are any plans to try to bring equity in that area and make sure that our rural schools are adequately funded.
Thank you very much for the question, Representative. We do have part of our weighted student formula, an adjustment or an additional weight to address the issues related with rural schools. I will ask, though, Assistant Superintendent Hallett to come and share a little bit more about the specifics related to weighted student formula.
Thank you for the question. Could talk about weighted student formula for a long time. I'll try to keep it brief. We do have 3 requests in this budget for weighted student formula. One is driven by inflation. We're challenged with inflation costs. It's reducing the purchasing power for all schools. Another request is to support vulnerable populations with English language learning. And then a third request, which specifically gets to what you're asking for, a $5 million request to maintain a program that we've been doing for several years and providing additional resources to rural schools, in particular the Molokai, Lanai schools at $250,000 additional funds. It's something they've become accustomed to, and it's something we would like to continue in recognition of the challenges rural schools face.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Members? Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent, I like your enthusiasm. If you
Thank
can
you,
deliver
Representative.
with all of it, with the same gusto, it'll be great. Couple of
you.
questions. First, an update, if you have one, on the vaping in your schools, and if there's anything that we have passed that has been helpful, or is it hindered? How is it going?
Vaping in schools continue to be a challenge for our schools and our students. Definitely our principals and teachers and counselors are working very hard to address that particular issue. I will ask if...
Didn't we pass a bill that you can confiscate the stuff? Did that work out? Some said it did, some said it didn't.
Yes, as a former high school principal, we do confiscate the vaping material and vape equipment that's used for vaping. We help our students to understand the impact that vaping has on students and their bodies. And students have been, engaged in vaping as early as in elementary schools. But we are definitely in the schools helping not only our students but our parents and our communities to understand that the detrimental impact that vaping has on our students and their bodies. I believe if we can continue to share the negative impacts of vaping, and to also address the issues related to the flavored vapes, I think that's something that entices students to vape. And so we ask the legislature for continued support in helping us to address that issue. From the school, we're helping students to understand the negative impacts on themselves, and also leverage issues related with Chapter 19 if we need to help our students to reflect on the choices that they're making.
What's Chapter 19?
Chapter 19 is our system that helps our disciplinary and system that includes an array of consequences from counseling and beyond. And what that does, the effects of or the intent of Chapter 19 is for students to learn. That students learn that with choices that they make, there are both positive things that happen and consequences. And so we leverage Chapter 19 to help our students understand choices are really important. And so,
Mr. Haishiro, what does the trend line look like? Is it level? Is it going down, or it's increasing? In terms
Representative, let me just check with. Do we have that data?
Yeah.
We can get that data, but Deputy Superintendent Armstrong will.
She's the
Okay.
vaping chief. Okay.
Hi, Representative. We can get the data to you. We're partnering with the Department of Health to do messaging campaigns. As far as the trend, we don't see a significant downward trend. It still is an issue, as Superintendent shared, but we'll get the data to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, if you can send the information to the committee, and then we will send it out to the members. Thank you.
Chair, may I have another question
Sure.
before I take a pause on that? Air conditioning has always been a big issue in terms of learning. It's probably as bad as vaping when you're sweating at 110 degrees. What % of the schools have air conditioning now, and what is the plan, if there is one?
Thank you very much for that question. To get to the specific numbers, let's see, either Deputy Otoguro or yes, Sonako.
Good morning, Kurt Otoguro, Deputy Superintendent. Thank you. Well, I'm new to the program. I know that not all schools have been air conditioned at this point in time to offset some of their quality issues. As you know, Representative, the department has been putting air purifiers that negate some of the issues pertaining to COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so while I don't have a specific number, if you want to buy classrooms, we have 3,000 facilities, buildings across the state that we can actually get you a specific number if that's what you're looking
We're
for.
all interested in our own districts.
In Hawaii,
To be honest with
East
you.
Honolulu. Well, I believe in that district, there are more that have been air conditioned, but.
Thank you very
yeah.
much. Thank you, Chair. I'll come back later.
Thank you. Representative Kahalo.
Aloha, Superintendent. Good to see you folks, and thank you for bringing your team here. Just a quick question about budget and related to any kind of teacher vacancies or teacher shortages. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like on a statewide level and whether or not there's funding for incentives to fill those positions?
Mhm. Thank you very much for the question. Actually, we do have Assistant Superintendent Sean Bacon here from the Office of Talent Management. Mr. Bacon?
Thank you for the question, Representative. Sean Bacon, Assistant Superintendent for Office of Talent Management. So yes, we do have one request in the budget for an additional position for teacher recruitment at this point right now. That's something that we've definitely been focusing on. Thankfully to the legislature last year, there was additional funding that was put in for differentials. There was also money that was put in for hard to staff positions too. So that is definitely something that's been helpful. But what we're still looking at this point right now is what we can do to better increase our recruitment incentives. One of the other requests that we have is we're looking at completely revamping the way that we are going to be recruiting for all of our positions coming up for next school year in May. We're working on a project right now where we're going to be able to actually post position specific, and we'll be able to really get some additional data and additional trends to be able to see how we can better use our resources moving forward here. So.
And do you have a kind of percentage of what those vacancies look like? I know other departments have been able to share or speak to what
So-
those open position percentages look like.
I don't have all of the percentages available. It's something that we definitely can get, but as of December right now, we were still having approximately about 700 teacher vacancies at this point right now.
And just one follow-up, is there anything, is there any larger shortages on any particular county in specific in comparison to Oahu?
It has been more challenging on the neighbor islands to fill some of our positions, and also our special education positions have been a little bit more challenging for us to also fill.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions? Representative Cochran, followed by Kobayashi.
Thank you, and good morning, Superintendent,
Morning.
and your entire team here. So I'm Maui County and Lahaina specific. Also, we have Waihe'e
Yes.
in this new district. So police presence is really needed, and as we see just basically across the nation with shootings, I mean, a 6-year-old, went and killed his teacher, and so where I was trying to find something in here in reference to some kind of safety ask to have more of that presence or education or something, to address that.
Thank you very much for the question. We are definitely addressing our safety issues at school on multiple fronts, not only on the physical plant, but also with personnel. We have been very fortunate to leverage some of our ESSER funding in that way as we work together with our schools and our principals. But to share a little bit more about what we're doing, especially in the area of school safety, either Deputy Otoguro, please.
Hi, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
And thank you very much for raising that. We had a House educational briefing on safety. It is a top concern. It's not just the schools. This is a statewide issue that I think we face. That we have a changing world, And it's just something that, you know, we in my former position, we looked at it for this capital district and using technology to aid in the shortness of having patrolling. And I think the schools have the same opportunity. But specific to schools, I will tell you that from a training standpoint, Department of Education has gone far and beyond to provide statewide training across the board. In fact, before I started, even they had a conference on active shooting. Over 1,000 attended that, and they had it 3 times throughout the year. These are opportunities that the department provides for staff that I wish that the entire state employees had an opportunity to view these kinds of actual things. As it pertains to the department, you're right. We need to beef up the security and the budgets for safety. We don't spend nearly enough, and enough is, I mean, even that dollar amount is not enough. In other words, because our schools have been designed to be open, you know, we can't fence them off. Certainly, we can't gate them all. But there have been focuses where we have predominant areas of issues. Assistant Tanaka has educated me on the fact that schools like Kaimuki High School, where they have an open park, provides that kind of opportunity for congregation that is not desired, and that spills over into the school property. And so there's areas there that they look at. Specific to Lahaina, I know that we've looked at different opportunities to work with the Maui SROs, which is a very good program, by the way, as you know. In fact, all neighbor islands have a security resource officer for the county police department, which is great, and it provides that top of mind and immediacy to respond. Having the resources at the school level also provide the ability for training, for counseling, and we just had that hearing. We had the opportunity to have a Maui specific security resource officer there, and so that was good. But yeah, I would love to have further discussions and entertain further opportunities to increase security for the schools as well as the state.
And thank you very much for having it on the table to discuss. And yes, we have a great program. But again, I brought it up because I think presence is preventative measures too. You know, no one's gonna want to act up when you see the actual blue and white sitting there, you know, at the front entrance to a school, and that helps at like.
And you know, we are in the process of defining additional security. I wouldn't call them security guards, security individual attendants at the schools into 3 levels. But it's hard to staff, as you know, but that requires training. You have your basic level all the way up to act. But you know, in security, what we've learned is that at that level, we're not law enforcement. So security is really observe and report. But you're right. The more presence you have, whether it's a security camera, whether it's lighting, whatever it is a deterrent. And that's really, I think, the angle that we need to address immediate.
Okay, very good. And a follow-up, Chair?
Please.
Thank you, and Superintendent. So as you know, there's a wonderful composting program going on at Lahaina Intermediate, along with they're reverted back to dishwashing versus single-use, albeit, you know, compostable products, but still it ends up being a trash form, and you have to do something with it. So is that idea or program being entertained to transmit throughout the state, being sort of like a pilot program, I think, right now at Lahaina Intermediate?
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Either Deputy Toguro or AS Tanaka, do you have some feedback on what we're doing at Lahaina Intermediate?
Good morning, Rip.
Good morning.
Yes, it's being expanded. The front end of it is we need to evaluate our food service operation. So a successful composting program means a failure in the food service area. It's because we're just trashing out more things. There's also health and safety requirements and what we do with the products. So from a totality of the food service operation, we're taking a stronger look at how we get better consumption, how we increase our consumption, the menu design, and all of that to reduce what goes out in the trash. Compost, and I've observed 5 different schools on the West Coast, the types of equipment that they have to mulch in the kitchen, to break it down in the kitchen makes it a better program all in all. So yes, from left to right, we're taking a hard look at all of those.
Okay,
Okay.
and then the dishwashing aspect,
So-
shying away from single-use type products, is that?
Yes,
out
well,
of-
single-use type products in and of itself is a bad thing, i.e. plastics. So we understand that. Water use is, given the issues of water in general and drought situations, is a little more problematic. So we're constantly looking at what's the best option. Products are getting better. During this period of COVID, we had some challenges of getting those kinds of products because of a supply line. There's a tendency to go back to some of the stuff that we used to do that may be easier to manage, and because we can't get those disposable plates or enough inventory, but we constantly, once again, look at the options. Depends who you ask, whether washing dishes is the way to go versus recyclable products. But we know for sure single-use products is where we clearly want to move away from.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, if you don't mind?
Please.
Okay, thank you. And so I was noticing there was a new grant in 2021. One was for American Rescue Plan, Homeless Children and Youth, 2.7 mil. The other was for 12.5 mil. Huakai e Huola, Journey to Healing through School-Based Mental Health Services. Are either of those to be continued, or I think they sound really wonderful and very needed?
Thank you very much for the question. So either Deputy Armstrong or A.S. Kalama, can you speak to that?
Hi, good morning, Representative. I'm Heidi Armstrong. We do have our homeless liaison. We have a homeless liaison coordinator in the state office, and she is our lead. We also have homeless liaison coordinators in every complex, in every district, and they are charged with finding our homeless children, ensuring they are connected to the services that they need, as well as being the bridge in coordinating schoolwork and school activities with the families. We do have several grants that support these efforts. I can share the specifics of those grants and what we've done with funding and what's in the works. I'll share that with the committee. I don't have that with me right now, but that'll give you a more detailed picture of the complete offerings that we have for this program.
Okay, excellent. And then the other, the mental health, are you familiar with that one? The 12.5 million Journey to Healing through School-Based Mental Health Services?
Yes, we are aware of that grant, and we are using, we are partnering with Chaminade University to provide education and training to support the expansion of educational psychologists in the schools. And hopefully through that, we will have more trained people to come into our schools to work and support the mental health needs of our students.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for all that
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Representative Kobayashi.
Hi, this is about CIP. There seems to be a huge increase in federal funds for CIP second year, $320,000. Why that huge increase? Like it's like a 3.5 time increase.
Thank you very much for that question, Representative Kobayashi. Deputy Otoguro or A.S. Tanaka?
Is that increase permanent or one time?
It's one time, and it's basically predominantly for our military schools that we have an opportunity to seize that. Specifically, for example, Nimitz Elementary, you have Lehua, you have Wheeler Elementary and middle. So we have opportunities to seize federal funds to improve the campuses that address the military families and the kids, and that's the reason.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in. They have some money in the prior fiscal year, but most of the majority is going to be in the fiscal year 25.
So that's a one time and mainly for military.
Well, right, for that specific one, we hope that we can
Okay.
continue that with the military campuses ongoing.
Another macro question. most of your CIP funds are lump sum. But historically, I mean, DOE and UH differ in their lump sums. UH traditionally has had many fewer lump sums. They have a lump sum, it's something like improve, renew, and modernize, which like includes everything. But you folks have the lump sums, you know, instruction, compliance, safety and health. I don't know, there used to be land acquisition, compliance, etc. Have you thought about maybe combining those like UH does? Would that give you more flexibility?
Thanks for that question, and probably AS Tanaka has the details behind that. But I would say that while it may be a large number, because DOE does deal in large numbers for its CIP budget, but there are a lot of line items specific to the schools themselves that are designated for specific projects.
Of course.
And so the lump sum would allow the department, as they're using it for various other activities, whether it's within the schools and R&M, whether it's expansion of certain aspects, and then you have other things specific to like McKinley Field, there's a specific thing for the athletic complex, right? So the department has the flexibility. Obviously, if it was all lump sum, it would be great. But that's a challenge that I think the department has when it's designated by the legislature for a specific school. That's where we have some of the CIPs that we may have encumbered, but we can't start because of permitting. And so,
Right.
yeah, so that it's a mixed bag. It's
But
flexible and it's not flexible.
if you had fewer lump sums, would that give you more discretion, more flexibility?
No, actually, just the opposite, right? Yeah. Go ahead. I think it'd be just the opposite.
Morning, Rep. Kobayashi. So I'll give you an example of the recent MOE allocation last year. Of the 256 million, there were 70 line items amounting to 131 million. And the rest of 126 million was lump sum. And that allows us to address the most important and urgent needs that come up. So I'll give you an example of, you never know that your roof leaks until it rains.
Right.
So all of a sudden we get this rain and we've got to go pull resources because we have to ensure that the classroom doesn't leak. So we have to move that, and with the lump sum, we have that flexibility to move. Our challenge is working closer with you to say, on a longer term range, if they're line items, this is where we would like to see the line items come in, because to
No,
some
wait.
degree of
I'm not
predictability.
talking about line items.
Yeah, no,
I'm talking about lump sum pots. You have many more lump sum pots than UH.
and we have many more facilities than UH.
Of course.
Right, so we have 290 facilities that we have to address. UH has a finite amount of facilities that they project and repair. But ours bounces all over the place, right? Because of just the situation of the magnitude of our facilities. So lump sum really is helpful in the balancing of the work that we have to do.
Okay. Doesn't sound very convincing at all.
Representative, definitely we'll get something together and get back with you on that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I follow up real quick to Representative Kobayashi's question? So, on the military grants, whenever we get them, it's always for elementary schools, but the students do enter our middle schools and high schools. Are there grants for that, or how does that work?
Currently, Chair, I do believe that the selection of the schools that are identified are through the military. And we've definitely had successes with that, and very appreciative of the military support. I think back in my visits to Solomon Elementary and Daniel K. Inouye, those schools look fabulous, and I think with the next other elementary school that's coming up is Mokapu Elementary. And I know we just had Deputy Armstrong attended
No, I understand
that
that,
opening.
but
yeah.
they eventually go to high school.
Yes, they
And
do.
so is there monies that could be
Okay,
sought after?
I'll let Deputy Armstrong ask the question.
Yeah.
The grants are for schools that are located on military installations, and currently we don't have a high school on a military installation. So that's why that particular pot of funding hasn't gone for the high schools.
Okay. So that's the criteria. It has to be on there.
Military base. Yes.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Thank you, members. Representative Morikawa. I'm sorry, Representative Garrett, followed by Morikawa.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My line of questioning is along CIP and repair and maintenance. I'm glad to see the high request regarding CIP you have over the next biennium. What is the number in terms of the deferred repair and maintenance for the entire system as of today?
Thank you very much. I'll either Deputy Otaguro or yes, Tanaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garrett. Obviously, you know it's a big number. I mean, when you add up all the different things, it's in excess of 2.4 billion in total, right? Now, to describe that, there are projects that are in progress. We have about 650 some odd projects active, right? When different aspects of the planning process, which is planning, design, out to permit. Active in construction right now at any given time is about 100, and it was about maybe little under $500 million of appropriations. Now through that, we got through actively, and we're probably about 111 million or so left to spend on that particular active. The unfortunate part is we all have another set of projects, probably more like 60%, about 160 projects, that is another 500 to 600 million that we have encumbered funds, but we haven't actively done it, right? And so those are pending for whatever reasons. It's because of permitting, it's because of supply, or it's because we don't have the resources actually to actively do that. And so that makes up a lot of what you see in projects there, as well as the deferred maintenance that you refer about. So yeah, it's a big number, and we have to address it. It's a matter of resources. Now, the department, as you know, has very innovative programs like JOC to tackle some of the smaller projects. And we've done that with what A.S. Tanaka said on the MOE funding to engage some of our other people to actively just move those out using that program. And so that's working now, just to expand. So it's really there's probably, we have more jobs than the industry can accommodate right now. As well as, we're just stuck with by county, but the permitting challenges that we have.
Okay, just as a quick follow-up, I suspect a lot of the schools that are older, they're going to cost more to repair and maintain. So related to that, is there a process for the department? We know the population shift, especially on Oahu, is to the west side, excuse me. I represent the Manoa district. I had the pleasure of visiting all three campuses in the district. So Manoa Elementary, where my daughter went, Noelani Elementary, as well as Hokulani, Blue Ribbon School. And speaking to the principals, we're looking at about 50% GE, geographic exceptions for the schools. So clearly Manoa is a more established neighborhood. What kind of strategic initiatives does the department have to make sure that these numbers are calibrated appropriately?
Yeah, surprisingly, as I joined the department, they have a very extensive program that they do for evaluation of different campuses. Is it called HiFit? Yeah. Yeah, there's three, yeah, and he can talk in detail, but basically they go out and they do an assessment with consultants for all the different aspects of the building, the electricals, and it's a very comprehensive study that says that these are the kind of things that we're going to have to address and maintain and fix or replace. And so the department has a very strong strategy by school. But we, like anything else, they got to get to all the different schools to do the studies. But maybe you want to explain the three of them.
So there are three studies. One was called Jacobs, which was done about 5 years ago. Another program is called HiFit, which Jacobs did really the square foot evaluation, what real estate we have out there, age, and some degree of condition of the schools. The second work that has been going on for the last 2 years is a thing called HiFit. That really gave us the condition of the schools, what shape the schools were in. And the third part is a thing called FAM, which is a facility assessment. And it really tells us what the priority should be for that particular school, and that's an ongoing study as we go. So that, we also did a pretty intensive electrical study, because as we talk about air conditioning, it's only part of it because the demands of those units need to be supported by electrical infrastructure that is somewhat dated. So we constantly evaluate. The other evaluation we're doing now is really proximity to schools if we get into the climate sea level rise issue. What would impact, and so that's all part of the evaluation of our schools. That's where we are.
Thank you.
You know, if I may add, Representative, being a new kid on the block, I think specific to like your specific neighborhood, your community, we have 2 elementary schools in one valley, right? And so I know there's always been a very sensitive topic about consolidation, about closing, relocations, and I think that the status or the nature of the quality of the school and what it's going to take to repair, because you're right, it's only going to get worse over years. We got a lot of old schools. We have some new schools, but most are old, so this maintenance issue is going to continue to plague our state and our department for many years. But I think we're going to have to start asking that hard question. Now that's from an evaluation point of view, nobody wants to go there because the community loves their schools.
Sure.
But we know that there's a declining population. There's shifting in populations. And so we know some of the schools have lost students or have relocated. And so these are all very complex issues that this department with the legislature need to address because it affects all your communities as well. But it's not a pleasant subject or a topic to address. But it's something I think from just a dollars standpoint and efforts, we can't do it all, as you know. We got more need than we have money and resources. So these are things that I think the state needs to address and the department needs to address, and with the legislature's help, I think that it's very possible.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so it is a very hard question, and no one's certainly going to advocate for the closure of a school in their own community, but you know, when you look at the numbers, it may just be, you know, one of those things where we have to actually take a look at making sure everything is, again, calibrated appropriately. So for that hard question, who's actually responsible for initiating that discussion about something like a closure? Is it the department, or is it more of the board level?
The ultimate decision of any school closure would rest with the Board of Education. The department in the past has supported in providing different kinds of information to the board in making those decisions. But as you shared, it is a very sensitive issue when we're looking at any type of school consolidation. But the department would work together with the board, but it is the Board of Education's decision, final decision.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair.
Okay, Representative Mercado.
Thank you. My question is more Kauai related, and it's more about property jurisdiction, whether it's a state, whether it's a county. I think in the past I worked with Parks and Recreation, so I understood where our boundaries were to maintain. But administration now at the county has dug deeper into figuring out who is the owner of the property. So we have incidences like Wilcox School. There's a tennis court right next to the school. Obviously, the school, elementary school, does not use a tennis court. So we always maintained it, but today they find that it's on state property. So they won't do anything to maintain it for the county. Also in Waimea, we have that issue where our gym sits on county property, yet the pool is on county property, and the park all of a sudden became county when I remember some long ago exchanging it with the DOE for another park. But now it's changed. So we have the county maintaining a park that's utilized mainly by the school. And so I want to help them because there is some major repair that needs to go around that park area that the school utilizes, but I'm having difficulty working with the county and trying to see who is going to be responsible for the responsibility. So I just need to know where to go. And I have a meeting today, and I would like some
information
advice.
on that. Okay, definitely,
Yes.
Representative. Kurt.
Thank you, Representative. I'm well aware of those issues. In fact, we have these issues across the state. You know, on the island of Oahu, this island, Many of our schools are actually still yet on Sealing County property that need to be transferred. And so this is, and it's complex, like you just said, right? It's not as easy just to give us the parcel of land and transfer. There's easements, there's parks, there's shared roads. And so I think not just Island of Kauai, but I think this state, we need to reevaluate what we're doing and work with the county. Now, in my past position, what I've learned is by county. Kauai, for certain aspects, they're very collaborative and actually wanting to share. In other cases, they're not. So it's on a case-by-case basis on a very specific parcel that it's either sensitive or it's like, nah, we can take care of it. So if there's specific things in your particular island that we need to address, yeah, you can let me know and we'll take the ball.
Yes, I'm very concerned about Waimea High School because it is a safety issue already where the wall could collapse.
Yeah, and all it takes is really looking at the TMKs and looking at where the easements are and what areas we need to take responsibility for. Now, where it gets complex is sometimes they want to run a sewer line underneath the state property. And that ain't going to work. We're not going to take liability for something that is truly a county type thing. So, but again, it's case by case for that specific parcel and what is shared and what is not. So yeah, we'll need to look at the details of that specific one at Waimea High School. I'm happy to do that with you.
So if I'm able to get some funding for that project, obviously it would go to the county because the county says it's their property, or would DAG still?
Yeah, we can absolutely work with DAGs, but again, before we commit, it's not just moving land. There are a lot of different things under the ground.
I just want the repairs to be done. I just don't know who to.
But if it's a simple repair, yeah, we can absolutely work with DAGs, and if there's
Okay.
funding over.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
But yeah, please call. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Ward, followed by Cochran.
Mr. Superintendent, a couple of metrics. The number of your graduates going on to college.
Yes.
And then the number, if it correlates, we are in the top 6 of spending per capita with the other 5 states. Are we also in the top 6 in terms of achievement or accomplishments of our students? And I say that because of the important correlation that has been for decades. Student achievement or education is the highest correlation with economic, social mobility. So in a way, your department holds probably more than any other department the future of Hawaii. And with that, how are we then with either college enrollments and then with the other 5 states that are leading the nation in terms of spending? Any correlation between spending and accomplishments?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Representative Ward. Dr. Chan.
Tammy Chun, Deputy Superintendent. I'll answer the question about college-going rates first. So we measure the percentage of our high school graduates who enroll in college within the fall or in the fall after graduation. So that college-going rate is current for class of 2021 was at 51% of our graduates enrolling immediately after high school. That was pandemic impacted, so there was a drop from the class of 2019, which was the pre-pandemic graduation year, which had a 55% college-going rate. We saw that our Native Hawaiian students, Pacific Islander students, low-income students, college-going rates were more impacted by the pandemic than students overall.
So the highest ever has been, what figure did you say?
The highest ever enrolling immediately after high school, 56%. 56%. If you give it more time, more students enroll. So if 16 months after graduation, we would typically see college enrollment rise to 62 or 63%. So some students lag their enrollment, over time, as students grow older, some of them decide to enroll. But our college immediately after high school, currently 51%. But what we did see in our data is that over the last 5 to 10 years, more and more students who are going to college are successfully continuing beyond the first year, and that the college graduation rates for our high school graduates have increased. And those data are available for every high school as well.
So how are we doing with we're big 6 in the nation is spending. How are we in terms of student achievement?
So I'm just going to clarify the per pupil expenditure chart that was in the slides. That particular chart was just comparing per pupil, our per pupil spending to the states who are performing better than us on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. It wasn't representing the highest spending states. So we can look at that
That's a different
information.
kettle of fish, actually.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and we can provide that information if you would like to see the overall per pupil spending.
Why did you do it that way?
In that particular slide, we did it that way because we were looking at how we were doing academically compared to other states on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and wanted to look at the states that were outperforming us to see what their expenditures, what level of expenditures they had.
But you're suggesting there could be an inverse correlation between spending and achievement then?
So the suggestion is that it's outright just presenting the information that 5 of the 7 states who outperformed us on the 4th grade NAEP this year did have higher per pupil expenditures.
Last question, Chair. In terms of the free lunch program, the last I heard it was 58% of the DOE students qualify for that. Is that figure still that high? That the income levels of many and most of the parents are not able to afford?
We're currently this year at 55% of students on free or reduced price lunch. That includes and that's qualified based on family size, household size, and income to the household. That number represents our students who individually qualify, as well as our students who are in schools that are part of what's called the community eligibility provision program, where based on the level of poverty in the community, the entire school qualifies for free lunch.
And that seems to correlate with the ALICE studies, where it's 58% or so they're on a borderline of poverty.
Correct.
Not a good sign, actually.
It's telling us that our families have a lot of challenges in terms of affordability.
And some of the other studies you've done is that socioeconomic status is correlated with their achievement level in the school also. The poorer, the less achievement, evidently.
Generally, when we look at it overall, we do see that our economically disadvantaged students are performing, fewer of them are proficient than the statewide numbers, or those who are not. Fewer students who are economically disadvantaged are proficient than those who are not economically disadvantaged.
So all of you have the toughest job, probably the most important job, is the bottom line, at least in my thinking. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Chair, and aloha. I'm noticing in our budget brief booklet here, one of the major adjustments to the executive budget, number 12, has to do with 2 permanent positions, asking for 1 mil for youth suicide awareness and prevention protocol. So I just wanted just a little bit of elaboration as to why that is now in there, and what are you seeing to have to, put this in as an addition?
Thank you very much for that question, Representative. Assistant Superintendent Annie Kalama.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. That is an unfunded mandate to provide the training across the state for our schools. So we have not had a person dedicated to doing that. So this ask is to have a person dedicated to make sure that we have implemented and have assisted schools in getting the training that they need, basically.
And because you're seeing, well, as I know from a council member of Maui County, Molokai having one of the highest teenage suicide rates there. So, if that's, you're aware, and if something like this is gonna hopefully, obviously address, bring those kind of numbers down, not just there specifically, but just across the board.
Absolutely, absolutely. We don't collect that data. Department of Health does collect that data, but we work closely with them on that, and we are aware of situations and incidents that happen. So, the whole intent is really to make sure that all of our staff at the school level understands and is able to prevent and intervene as necessary.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you so much for addressing that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any further questions? Representative Kobayashi.
This is again about CIP. First, a comment. Governor is treating DOE better than most departments. Some departments have $0 CIP second year, or one line item blank 0 for CIP second year, like, you know, $0 for GO bonds second year. So I guess you have a favorable position in terms of CIP. One of the things that is apparent in this entire budget is that there is a huge amount of money in the governor's budget for cash CIP, including DOE. Is it worth considering moving some cash from CIP to operating? What we did, for instance, with the public libraries is that I believe we increased their minor repair and maintenance from $200,000 to $1 million per year for minor projects, you know, fix that door or fix the plumbing. But part of their point was that if they don't have water, if they have a broken pipe in a library, that could close the entire library. So non-CIP money for those kinds of repairs are sometimes important to keeping the operation going. Would it be helpful if some of that cash money in CIP be moved to operating?
Thank you for the question, Representative.
The short answer is yes. I think so. But what you're referring to is the governor, when we asked in the first fiscal year for $626 million, we got 415, so he knocked down 200 million, 211 million, and then the second year was 893 million, and then they gave us 645. Still yet substantial amounts compared to what the state's bonding capacity is. But 125 million in that second year is what the governor gave us for that, and it was to be determined for deferred maintenance. So it really depends on the type of projects that we're working on. Obviously, if you're putting in operating budgets, if it's a sustainable on an ongoing basis and not a one-time, that would be preferred. Because again, we're going to run across the same issue of stacking up all the projects in a specific year. That won't work. So are going to be different projects, like Randy said, if it's a roof project for deferred maintenance, or we have to get to it, we're not going to get to it in a year, possibly, if we have to bid it out. So it really depends on the type of projects that we're working on. Smaller issues like plumbing, yeah, if we can just fix it, it's easier done in an operating budget. So we're happy to work with you on specifics.
I guess my question is, where do you need more money? You know.
I don't know. We need plenty of money every.
You need money on both sides, I know.
That's not a hard question.
It's a tough, it's almost an unanswerable question because of the magnitude of the work that we have, the age of the facilities. The average age of our facilities are 63 years old. So the continuum of repair is never ending. It's just prioritization, right? That's the challenge we have. There is a square foot model on a national model, and I've got to get that for the committee, what it would cost to get us to where we would be comfortable, and it's quite expensive. If I recall, it's like $6 or $7 billion. And I don't think that's a fundable situation. There are many needs across the state. So we try our best with what you guys grant us. So we appreciate what you guys give us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Non-answer.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming in, and we look forward to working with you, and we're going to be in recess.
Thank you, Chair.
one has the ring. Okay, the Committee on Finance will reconvene our informational briefing. Next up for us is Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
All right, thank you, Chair. Great to see you. Great to be here today. Vice Chair, members of the Finance Committee. First time actually testifying in this very new setup that I can recognize, and quite interesting and awesome nonetheless, and very proud to be here. And as the Director of the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, we are so excited to present to you our opening budget and answer any questions that you have. If I can take the time to introduce our team here, if that's okay?
Please.
So I'm Director Chris Sadayasu, and I have a strong DBED background. So as I said, very excited to be part of DBED and leading the team. So as in the org chart that I have before me, that was in part of the budget briefing materials that was submitted, we have BED 113, John DeFries, President CEO of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Thank you. So, put on my reading glasses, thank you. Hawaii Community Development Authority, BED 150, Craig Nakamoto, Executive Director. High Tech Development Corporation, BED 143, Len Higashi, Executive Director. Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority, BED 138, Gwen Yamamoto Lau, Executive Director. BED 120, Hawaii State Energy Office, Kirsten Baumgart Turner, Acting Chief Energy Officer. Moving to the other side, Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We actually have two here, which is BED 144, Scott Glenn, Director. We also have Scott Derrickson, Chief Planner with the Land Use Commission. Natural Energy Laboratory of Hawaii, NELHA, BED 146, Greg Barber, Executive Director. BED 142, which is Dori Palkovich. She's not here, but watching on TV, and she's the Small Business Regulatory Review Board. Denise? Sure, Denise. Well, Denise might be on her way. If not, I can answer questions for them. Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, Denise Isari Matsubara, Executive Director. We have Agribusiness Development Corporation, BED 170, James Nakatani, Executive Director. And then rounding out the roster before we get to the divisions within DBED is Stadium Authority, BED 180, Ryan Andrews, Stadium Manager. All right. Okay, then very pleased to announce as our Administrative Services Officer, which is our BED 142, Lucy Pasquale. Lucy, her first day today as our ASO. So she'll come up and testify after this. No, sorry. No. But very, very excited to have her on board. And then Stephen Sung is our Human Resource Officer. And I want to give a plug to Stephen. And he was performing our role as both ASO and HRO for probably the last 18 months or so. So absolutely awesome job by him. And now Lucy started today, and we're very excited to have our director's office and ASO office filled. So I have also, make sure I go here, our broadband strategy officer, which is Bert Lum. Bert. Thank you. And then also Scott Murakami, who is our federal grant coordinator, and they're all under 142. Okay, and then as you see in Business Development and Support Division, BED 100, the famous Dennis Ling, Administrator. Aloha. And then even more famous is Creative Industries Division, BED 105, Georgia Skinner, Chief Officer. Thank you, Georgia. Foreign Trade Zone Division, BED 107, David Sicking, Administrator. And then Dr. Tian, who has been before you all, Research
and Economic Analysis Division, BED 130, Economic Research Administrator, Eugene Tian. Thank you. So if I just a couple remarks, and that's okay, and then we'll turn it over to your questions, if that's okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned, been 20 years in DBED. You know, it started at HHFDC as a housing development specialist. So I'm familiar with affordable housing projects and development of that. And as governor's #1 priority of developing affordable housing, very, very excited to be the director of this department. And then also spent time at Aloha Tower Development Corporation, then Hawaii Community Development Authority, and then most recently Hawaii Tourism Authority. And so I am a DBED person. I've been born and raised in DBED, 22 years of state government experience. So very, very excited. So this is not a budget that our administration put together, but it's something that all of our team members here put together as part, and so they had a basic understanding or instructions to put in what is to keep the same budget as was previous. I think I want to identify John DeFries and BED 113. They asked for $75 million and $60 million, and that is put in as part of their request for operating expenses and funding and marketing and destination management. So, as I said, very excited, very honored to be here, and turn it over to y'all. That's okay for questions to our team.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, we'll open up to questions. Representative Kobayashi.
Our tables show that HTA, Hawaii Tourism Authority, asked for 95 million, not 75.
You would, oops, awesome. So John?
Representative, can you repeat the question?
That's all right, it's only $20 million
Oh.
per year.
No, so yeah, he said we asked for 95, but then in the budget is 75, correct?
Correct. 60 million in base funding and a one-time 15 million for fiscal 24, for a total of 75.
But you
I would
asked
love
for
the
95.
95, by the way, but we are at 75 for fiscal 24 and 60 million for fiscal 25.
Yes, but you asked for 95.
Correct.
So what was the add-on for?
It was our effort to begin to restore pre-pandemic funding levels so that we could restore the different commitments that we need to make in both brand marketing and destination management.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Restored.
Okay, thank you, Representative Garrett.
Just a quick follow-up, maybe Director, where do things currently stand with the marketing RFP for HTA?
Thank you for that question. And so, Representative, we are about to issue RFPs for both destination marketing as well as destination management. But I have to be very careful as to what information we share, because it is going to be an active procurement, and we shouldn't be disclosing those things, because on the first day that I was sworn in oath of office, I was told that I'd be sued about the previous procurement. So, but that is the plan. I think we're going to put it out quite quickly, and then they're working on the amounts and the timing. So, sorry, John.
Let me add that at the moment, what's critical to this timetable is the formation of the respective evaluation committees, right? Because they themselves need to be afforded the opportunity to review the actual RFP. That committee will be made up of subject experts, and we're in the process right now of finalizing that list for both RFPs.
Thank you. And thank you, Director, for accepting this appointment despite the threat of being sued personally. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair.
I have some metric questions, Mr. Director. Starting with the post-COVID recovery, how many businesses did we lose? How many did you guys save and jobs created? Just sort of a bit of a metric profile, if you have any.
Can I ask Dr. Tian to answer that question, because I think he's most qualified?
He honored us with his presence the other
Yes.
day, actually.
Oh.
But he didn't talk about these, though.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Ward. We actually did 4 surveys during the pandemic. So initially in April 2020, there were about 60% of our businesses closed temporarily.
Did you say 60% closed?
Yeah, 60%. They were closed either temporarily or permanently. So the latest survey we did is actually in March 2021. So at that time, it came to about 5.8% is permanently closed. So the temporary closed ones, they reopen. So the number would be 5.8% is permanently closed.
Only 6% permanently closed?
60% were temporarily closed at the beginning.
And then permanently closed were how many?
Yeah, a year later is about 5.8% is permanently closed.
That's a pretty good recovery rate.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think currently the recovery in our GDP is about 95%. So we still 5% below the pre-pandemic level.
Dr. Tian, do you also do like the feds do, like, hey, this month we created so many thousands of jobs, et cetera? Have you guys got similar ball scores like that?
Yeah, the federal data is, Hawaii data is part of the federal. So we also release the data on the number of job count on a monthly basis. I think currently we are still about 42,000 below the 2019 level. Our estimate is about, it takes about 7 years for the job to recover. For tourism, it's about 6 years. A job is always below, is later.
42,000 in which industries primarily?
It's mostly is in the tourism industry, because the visitor industry recovery is only about 90%.
But we're
90%.
expecting from your other report a rather robust recovery in the visitor industry.
Yeah, the non-tourism is doing good, and tourism is still falling behind, among others. Some of the local businesses, for example, the we call financial activities, continue to lose jobs. We saw job loss in the construction as well. The construction industry was doing good during the pandemic, but starting last year, 2021, we start to lose jobs. It's mainly because of the building permit backlog, and we see pretty good improvement during the last few months of 2022. So we lost the building permit volume, we lost about 10.9%.
Thank you. I want to shift to the film industry, if I may. Jared, I want to follow up because this is an unrealized potential. What are the ball scores with where we are in that market, and why can't we be #1 in the country rather than, I think we're somewhere in 5 to 10?
I'd like you all to, you probably all know her, but this is our State Film Commissioner, Donnie Dawson. I'm going to have her respond to some of the background as to why, to answer the second part of your question. Currently for 2022, we're at $488 million in terms of production spend. That is the highest number that we've ever had in the state. So as you probably know, the film industry was the first industry to come back out of the pandemic, setting a high bar, and I'd like Donnie to go ahead and address that. And we also have, a lot of good things planned for this coming year. Go ahead.
Mahalo, Representative Ward. Aloha, everyone. Good morning. That's a really remarkable figure, $488 million. And when you consider the fact that we've seen exponential growth in the film industry since I started, which was 2001, which was just over $80 million a year in direct spend associated with film production in the state of Hawaii. So it's been exponential growth. We've gone from a few hundred workers, jobs created by that, to now close to 5,000 jobs. But I wanted to call attention to the fact that it's a great return on investment for the state because there's not a huge amount of money that is put into the film program in terms of marketing and operational support. And it just speaks exactly to your question about the potential. As an example, the British Columbia Film Commission was formed the same year as the Hawaii Film Office, 1978. And granted, they're another country, a province in another country, but they are now at $4.5 billion a year in direct spend for that province, and about 60,000 jobs associated with film production. They've garnered the nickname Hollywood North as that moniker because of that. So, to your point, I just think it shows that with a little bit more support, direction, stabilizing of our tax credit program, there's a lot of potential there for the film industry.
So we could be the Hollywood of the Pacific easily then.
Absolutely. And we already are the production center for the Pacific, and we are one of the top 10 locations. Hawaii has this dubious honor of competing with other countries more than other states. But truth be told, it's more expensive to film in Hawaii than any other place on the planet because of our geographic isolation.
But in terms of tax credit, aren't places like Kentucky and Georgia outbidding us because this body?
Oklahoma is now a production center for Hollywood.
What, are they over $1 billion or up to $1 billion yet?
Not yet.
Not
They
yet?
don't, we have.
Who's the top performer?
I would say right now it is Georgia, not the state, not the person. And that is for two very specific reasons. One is they have no spending ceiling on their tax credit, and they have no sunset date on their tax credit. And every production, almost every production, we've lost shows to Atlanta, but every single production that films here, big or small, is going to be filming some element of their project in Atlanta, in Georgia and the greater Atlanta region.
What is our cap? If theirs is no
50
cap?
million.
50 million. And the average that they work with no cap, how do they come in? Much more or around that? So why don't we do the same thing? Or I know, look, this is the finance committee. A lot of people don't believe in tax credits, and we've lost money with the high tech stuff. Is it something that you would say we should raise the cap, and that would draw more? Or what? In other words, why aren't we going beyond 448 million or whatever you just said?
The only reason why the tax cap, the spending ceiling works is because it's a rolling cap, and it allows us to claim from subsequent years once we reach that 50 million. The problem with that is the volume of business we're currently doing is closer to 100 million. So we're borrowing from or claiming from subsequent years to keep that existing volume of business going, so there is no real room for growth in the industry. And as long as there is a sunset date, and we just, gratefully to the legislature, we just got that sunset date pushed back to 2033. But the closer we get to a sunset date, an insufficient credit cap doesn't work because you don't have the future years to claim from. And the other problem is that it causes significant delays in the tax credit claimants, their ability to claim the credit, because they're waiting at least 24 months to get their credit claim back. So that's problematic from a competition standpoint because Hawaii is in the midst of a fiercely competitive industry, and there are too many alternate choices which we made for them to make their multi-million-dollar decisions to take that business to another jurisdiction where perhaps they're not going to have that lag time and there's not going to be that limitation on what they can spend. And the recent Apple Television chief of war project with Jason Momoa is clearly indicative of how Hawaii needs to up the ante, because they had to take half the project to New Zealand because they couldn't deny the cost savings. And they maxed out on the cap here, which is good, but they couldn't film the entire project here, and it is a uniquely Hawaiian story. So that's a really good example of how Hawaii, if we want to be in the big leagues in this industry and be competitive on a global level, we gotta do something about that.
I totally agree with you, but I want to say what Representative Garrett said. I don't want to make it a one-on-one, but if we could meet at another point
Absolutely.
to get your input on this. I mean, we talk about we got to diversify the economy. You guys are, to me, the low-hanging fruit, and we're kind of just letting you there without really moving on to the next step.
And I have to say this one more thing, and I know I'm kind of dominating the time, but the film industry, largely because of the film unions, have set the bar on COVID safety and production safety. And that is hugely important, because no production anywhere on the planet can afford a shutdown due to COVID or any kind of health outbreak. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, the industry and the unions got together, and they really took a hard look, spoke to all the medical experts, and they changed the way they do production to make it the most supremely COVID safe experience they can do.
I look forward to continuing this offline. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further questions?
Otherwise, I'm going to continue discussing if no one else.
Okay. You have anything, Representative Ward?
We can't talk about the stadium. Was that what I heard in code language?
I'm sorry?
We can't talk about the stadium?
No, go ahead.
We're here, sir, to answer questions about the stadium if you're interested.
So that's not one of your vows of silence?
Did
Okay,
not
what's the latest on the stadium? What are we going to have? What's it going to look like? And is there a consensus on what we should do?
And it might be a little vow of silence as well, and Stadium Authority Manager Ryan is here as well, and that is active procurement as well. So, but we are looking at all options, and I'm prepared to speak in generalities about that, but it is an active procurement. So we are looking at the funding, the $350 million that was appropriated, and to DBED, and then determining the best way forward. We will have a recommendation to the governor shortly, but it's whether it's this existing public-private partnership RFP that was started by DAGS is still the right model, or a different form, and that's something we're studying all the different iterations and possibilities of different ways of doing public-private partnerships as well, and might even include a design, build, operate, maintain with a finance, DBFOM. So there's different ways of doing it. We're looking at the positions of both the House and the Senate with respect to this matter. And the governor did state that we're moving forward with a P3, and we still plan on doing a P3, just might change the model of the P3, but we haven't made that decision yet.
So there will be a stadium, but we don't, or do we know when? When will what you just said happen?
It's still scheduled for 2027 football season, but it may change.
Okay. Last question. Mentioning film and the diversification of the economy, do you have a study group or a committee that says, hey, here's the best way we should diversify the economy? You know, people pop up with ag, but film to me is a no-brainer. Is there something that you guys can recommend to this body? Because we talk about it a lot, but we don't have a grounded, if you will, study or parameters of which are the better ways to go, the quicker, the lesser, the cheaper, or the most impactful. Do you guys do anything with that? We need some advice is the bottom line.
The study group, I'm meeting with a lot of different entities, Business Roundtable, the Bankers Association, all the different entities, the tourism industry. I've been doing that in the last 36 days. And so very excited to hear their perspective and what to do and how we move forward. But I believe we have a bunch of experts in the room here. and they are all leaders in the industries that they represent. So I'm taking their feedback as we go. And so we have a hydrogen hub application. We have our tourism authority, who the numbers are quite spectacular. And we're doing a procurement for the USA marketing as well as destination management. So we do have ideas, we do have items. We have HHFDC for affordable housing, HCDA for urban redevelopment, High Tech Development Corporation. So we have all these people who are making a difference for our economy, for our workforce, for economic generation. So we have those ideas, we have that. We have to work with budget and finance to put together our second round of what we're going to submit, but our proposals are due to them, and they're going to have to decide what's a priority for the entire government. So
Thank you for that.
we'll have that information shortly.
Chair, may I ask Mr. DeFries what managed tourism looks like?
Sure.
Mr. DeFries. That's the new terminology that to some people means something, but to other people they're not sure what it is.
I can barely hear you.
Managed tourism, what does it mean? What do we, before it was promote, come on, everybody to Hawaii, and now it's like, hey, cool it. How are we doing that, managing it?
You know, the good news is that we're going to end 2022 with less visitors and more spending, right? Which is fundamentally what the goal was. I think we're down in visitor arrivals compared to pre-pandemic 2019, roughly 9%, with visitor spending going north of 11% for the
You're
county.
taking away Dr. Tion's thunder here.
I'm sorry, down 11 in terms of visitor arrivals and up 9% in spending.
How did we do that? Or was that COVID? Or?
Magically, no.
Great management.
You know,
yes.
none of us can really get comfortable with that yet, because the markets are still stabilizing, right? We've driven these results primarily from the U.S. market without the help of the Japan market. And Dr. Tian last week, along with Yuhiro, forecasted a possible recession in America that we hope will coincide with the recovery of the Japan market. And so, 2 years ago, 28 months ago, when I stepped into this role at HTA, I thought the results we're getting now would take 4 to 5 years to achieve. And it didn't happen because of HTA. It happened because HTA is a classic living example of what a successful P3 partnership is all about, is that the private sector, together with your leadership here at the Capitol, along with our management of it, has resulted in this. But we are not yet completely out of the woods, because our ability to maintain the level of tax generation, which will go north of $2 billion. In fact, one of my heroes is Superintendent Hayashi. On the way out, I told him, we'll generate the $2.2 billion that you need for DOE, okay? Because that's roughly what the visitor industry will generate.
They need 2.4, by the way.
Bill us for the exam. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Representative Karen.
Just one more. Director, could you give us an update on where you're at with the broadband initiative and the department's commitment to digital equity in particular?
Can I ask Bert to answer, and then I can add on to that?
Sure.
Thank you. Bert? Where did Bert go? Oh, sorry.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Finance Committee. I'm Bert Lum. I'm the Broadband Strategy Officer. Happy to be here to answer any of your questions.
Oh, go ahead. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Oh, no, if you could just give us an update on where you're at with the broadband initiative and the department's commitment to digital equity.
So the main driver behind some of the activities that we're doing right now is a function of the federal government and the programs that are resulting from things like ARPA or the American Rescue Plan and IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. The two that are critical right now are coming out of the IIJA. One is called BEAD, and BEAD stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. And the second one is from the Digital Equity Act. And there was a recent announcement back in early December, where Hawaii was awarded the planning money for both of those programs. And so out of the $5,570,000, $5 million went to the University of Hawaii to start the BEAD planning, and $570,000 came to DBID for us to start the digital equity plan. And that was something that I had put out as an RFP. We just had a meeting yesterday to do a selection for our selected vendor to proceed with doing a digital equity plan. The way that the timing works out is that both of these programs have a predefined time frame set by the federal government. So in the BEAD plan, they have 270 days, and the clock started on November 1st. For the digital equity plan, our clock started on December 1st, and we have 365 days. But the interesting thing about these two plans, and they're tightly integrated, you might ask, well, how come one is a different time frame than the other? The NOFOs, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, were actually written by different people. So in the case of the BEAD program, they have 270 days, and in our case, 365. But the requirement is for our digital equity plan to be a part of the BEAD plan. And if we look at the timing, we need to at least put in a draft of our digital equity plan by around the July timeframe. So even though we are about to make an award, and my target date is to actually establish February 1st as the start date for the consulting team, we basically have February, March, April, May, June, and July. So a little bit of 6 months, right? So it's going to be a really tight schedule. And the whole idea behind the digital equity plan is that we would be looking at primary, what they call covered populations. And these covered populations are pretty well spelled out, in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And they include, homeless, veterans, incarcerated, rural communities, kupuna. So we have to actually go out and determine what is the situation in those particular communities as to why they may not be able to achieve digital equity, and then make recommendations for the plan, which would then lead to the second phase, which is the digital equity capacity grants. So these capacity grants are part of this program, which is like a 5-year program. So we will have this 1 year to do this plan, and then it'll lead to the capacity grants, and then we have another 4 years to implement those capacity grants based on what we come up with our plan.
So if I can add, so thank you, Brett, for that. And so it is one of Lieutenant Governor Luke's initiatives, and we've had meetings with her. We also schedule meetings with University of Hawaii, who is doing the infrastructure work. And so we're staffing up as well the positions that were awarded and appropriated for that. So very excited for this initiative. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just once we attain digital equity, I think the next logical step is digital literacy. So can you tell us some of your initiatives in that front?
So the umbrella of digital equity basically contains 5 key elements. One is broadband access, one is digital literacy, one is access to devices, one is affordability, and the 5th one is digital navigators. And how do we help these communities that are typically kind of marginalized and disenfranchised? How do we help them get up to speed? So all of these elements are part of digital equity. And of course, broadband access is the infrastructure work that is being done. Digital literacy is the classes, and there are a number of actually activities that are currently going on to deliver digital literacy into the community. Affordability is part of the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program, which is, I think you've all heard of the It was the EBB in 2021. The EBB, Emergency Broadband Benefit, transitioned to something called the Affordable Connectivity Program, which went from $50 off your internet bill to $30 off your internet bill. And we've been actually rolling this out on a very grassroots basis. But recently, the FCC made available some ACP outreach grant monies and put it out to the states to come up with ideas on how we might use some of this money for ACP outreach. And the due date for that grant proposal was January 9th, so early this, this week. So we actually put in a proposal for about $1 million to do ACP outreach. Now, keep in mind, all up until now, we have had basically no funds to do ACP outreach, so it's been very grassroots. And what I did was I put out an RFI to see who in the community could contribute to being a part of an aggregate for us to submit to the FCC to help cover not only particular geographic areas, but also include opportunities for the entire state. So that went in on January 9th, and the FCC has told us that they should be making some awards around the 10th of March. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, but understand that this is a competitive grant program that is across the country. The expectation is that they will get back to us, and we may need to kind of hone in on the number, once they start to review it. Some of the structure of the program was that the minimum grant request was $50,000. The maximum is $1 million. This is again, it's over. Once they award it, then we will then look at getting all of our partners that were part of the RFI and the submittal to be involved and start to actually implement based on whatever funds we get from the FCC. Oh, the other thing I wanted to add was that what the FCC has also told us is that every state should be getting $500,000 at a minimum. So we're hoping that somewhere between the number that we submitted and the ultimate number that we get is somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Representative Lamosal, followed by Ward.
Thank you, Chair. This question is in regards to the Made in Hawaii program. So I do notice that your department request was for $100,000. And I just wanted to see if that would be sufficient enough to run a successful Made in Hawaii program, and want to also see how you folks would also enforce this program as well.
Thank you. Dan? Thank you for that question, Representative.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, Representatives. Dennis Ling with Business Development and Support Division. The Made in Hawaii program is very important to us, as you know. The Made in Hawaii, it's more than just a logo and more than just a name. It implies the place that we come from. I mean, all that is good about Hawaii is sort of embodied within the Made in Hawaii program, or the Made in Hawaii moniker. As such, our position request, our request for $100,000 is nowhere enough to satisfy the promotion and the marketing of this. But it gives us a head start in determining exactly how we can go about doing the best job that we can, given the limited resources that we have. So we will be having, sometime in March, a conference to bring together the stakeholders who might be interested in utilizing the Made in Hawaii brand as something for their product or service. And we're trying to get to them to provide us with input as well as information that we can use to develop the logo. See, the logo itself, we are waiting also for the development of a broader logo, hopefully in conjunction with the travel and tourism market, so that we can be inconsistent with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Representative Ward, followed by Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the broadband accessibility issue, has Starlink been a consideration in your deliberations? You know, overnight, Ukraine went dark to where everybody was, well, at least most people in the Kiev side was immediately accessed. I have a friend also in Kaneohe who pays $110 a month. Powerful, unrelenting access. Have you guys considered it?
Yes, and let me share a little bit about the priority in terms of the federal government's funding for a lot of the broadband infrastructure. So the two basic providers are Hawaiian Telecom and Charter. And these are the two primary ISPs because they primarily provide internet access through what we call last mile or terrestrial
You didn't say
connection.
Spectrum, though.
Yeah, Charter Spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Charter/Spectrum. And they are basically terrestrial landline providers. So Hawaiian Tel came into the industry as a telecom provider or telephone provider, but they can do internet now with copper and fiber. And similarly with Charter Spectrum, they came into the market doing coax to do video, but are now able to do ISP internet access over coax or fiber. Okay, so the primary funding that is coming available from the federal government prioritizes the kind of fiber connection that these providers build into the last mile. So that's kind of the priority. Now, to answer your question.
Why is that the case? I mean, that's not the technology, obviously.
Well,
The wireless is the future, actually.
Starlink is an alternative. There is something that it's more expensive, and it's primarily geared to rural communities, very rural communities. What it doesn't provide is a blanket solution for all needs. So the primary, I think, priority as far as some of this funding is concerned is to get the last mile connectivity as far as it can go. Now, what is also being looked at is something called a high cost threshold. So you can start looking at fiber to as many places as you can, but if there are locations that are really far off the grid, that would probably cost a lot of money to run a fiber connection to. So those would perhaps exceed the high cost threshold. And those particular communities, could opt for a Starlink connection. Another example is on Ni'ihau. You can get Starlink on Ni'ihau because there's coverage across the entire state. But again, it kind of depends on the interests of the parties, in those communities to want to now go in and actually take on, installing the dish and, buying the service.
So are you saying you're not considering it because that's not where the money is that's going to pay for it?
Primarily, yes. The primary use of the money is going to be for fiber connections to the home.
But how are you going to get cable to Ka'u and some other remote parts of the Big Island? I mean, even though you got the money, in terms of the cost, is that really practical?
Well,
the point is, could you look at Starlink as an option for something? Because before President Lausner was the president of the University of Hawaii, we had a broadband task force here in the Capitol. And Spectrum, I think, was a different name at the time, but Hawaiian Tel, they did not share their grids. It was very, very touch and go in terms of what was really out there. And wireless was over here on the side, and they were the one that was doing all the technological leaps and bounds. And from what I can see, wireless is going to be the future. But the money is with the old-fashioned cable. I'm not sure we're going to be up to speed if that's the way we go, because the future is not going to be that way. I mean, even your stereo, everything is open your front door, start your car while it's far away. Everything is wireless. So could you at least look at Starlink and see what we can do? Because there's places in Hawaii where we have no access whatsoever, or let's say it's just blind spots.
Yeah, and I will tell you that we will be looking at that. Now, what would happen to drive a potential, let's say, project that would include Starlink would be a consideration of how do we accommodate those particular locations that are above the high cost threshold? And are there some additional funds that could be applied to perhaps make that, make that a reality? So right now, the federal money is pretty prescribed. So what we're looking at is, are there other alternative funds that could perhaps address some of the high cost threshold locations? So Starlink could definitely be a candidate for that.
It sounds like K Street is still very powerful. But last question, Chair. The coffee wars, are they still going on? The coffee labeling wars, any update on those? And what we can expect from your farmers, if anybody is in the coffee labeling business? Hearing none, seeing none?
Yeah. Anybody? Coffee label. Oh, Jimmy, perfect. Always coming to the rescue, sir.
No, I'm going to try to answer that, but it's with the Department of Agriculture, and I think the war is still going on. So this has been deliberated. You're talking about the percentage of coffee in blends and everything else like that. That's been going on a long time. I'm not sure. I know the last time I talked to someone in quality assurance, they were looking at a study with the University of Hawaii to determine, how do you determine the percentages and everything? Because it's not as simple like, oh, DNA, we can check it out, or we can check the records and everything. Just to let you know, it started when I was a director. That's a long time ago. So it's been going on, but I believe they're doing a study on that. But you might ask the department when you have that, when they come to brief you guys on.
We shall do that, but they don't consult with you guys, or, I mean, this is a business entrepreneurial endeavor. I mean, there's a lot of dollars that involve, not just the
It is a lot of
science.
dollars, and part of it is marketing. And you hear both sides, yeah. For one, you hear that the best coffee, best tasting coffee is a blend coffee. I mean, I know the guys in Kona will kill me with that. But you know what I mean? I'm not a coffee.
I yield to the Big Island.
Coffee person. No, but it's a matter of taste, right? You know, and it's marketing and stuff like that. But I mean, we can go on, and they can look at it, but all of that, you know, it's marketing. You know, how do you what's the balance? And
But I think you
that's
guys
what
should
they're
be at the
going for.
table.
But Representative, we can commit to working with Department of Ag on this, and working with Made in Hawaii and the team, and looking at it a little further as well. But and as part of Governor Green's commitment is that the administration, directors, and departments all work together to collaborate on those.
It's one of our biggest exports.
It is.
So we can't just look askance.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Representative Ward. Department
I
of Ag
yield to
will
the
be
Big
with
Island
us.
coffee growers.
Department of Ag will be this on Tuesday, and you can continue the discussion. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you. I have a question about the CIP budget for that Oahuaca Reservoir.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim.
Back up here.
Can you kind of describe what that is?
I beg, you know, I didn't hear the question about that.
Oh, okay, that,
Yeah.
the CIP request for the 1.1 million.
Okay. Oh, okay, this is a tongue twister. Oaxaca, yeah?
Yeah.
That's in Lehue. That project started way before I did, and it's in Kalepa, yeah? And what they did is that a certain dam there to bring it into compliance, but and I don't want to throw another agency under the bus, but it wasn't, we weren't in control of it. And then we've been going around and around and around to just resolve that. And, you know, things like COVID came along. We thought we would resolve this in 2020 or whatever, 19, but then COVID came along and it kind of just, you know, people just forgot about it. And what we want to do is just put it to rest, put the dam to, you know, make it compliant. I don't think there's any danger of breaching, but technically, we just need to bring it to compliance. So that's what the funds are for, just to finish it
I'm
up.
just curious why it's in your budget.
We requested that on the first round, and then so it was approved by the last administration. And so, it's in the, it's
I
in
mean,
the
it's a
budget.
good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Thank you, Scott Glenn. Thank you.
Thank you
Aloha,
for
good morning,
being
Vice
here.
Chair.
I have a question related to, so my district now includes Ka'ava, which has a lot of coastal areas and coastal erosion along the beach. And I've met with DOT about that, and I know it's going all the way up the North Shore. So I'm just wondering, as far as your office is concerned, what kind of work is happening related to climate change in that area, coastal erosion? How are you working with the DOT to make sure that we maintain access for everyone who lives along the coast? And what's the long-term plan of trying to fix that issue?
Sure. Thank you very much and for the opportunity to talk about this very important issue. First, I'd just like to note that recognized Governor was here and speaking with the committee earlier this week, and and several representatives brought up questions of coastal erosion. So I heard that, and I asked my team at the Office of Planning to watch the video with the governor and to hear your questions and start preparing answers and understanding the questions you were asking. I'm a little new to this conversation. For the last 3 years, I've been focused on the mitigation side of climate, and I'm very excited to come back to the adaptation side. Director of Transportation Ed Sniffen and I have been working very closely together for the last several years on a variety of transportation questions. So I'm excited to continue working with him. He and I have worked together in the past as well. In my previous job as the Office of Environmental Quality Control, I worked with then Director Fuchigami and Ed Sniffen on Maui's coastal realignment. And so I'm looking forward to re-engaging with him in this new capacity. I do have with me Justine Nihipali. She is back here. She is the head of our Coastal Zone Management Program and has been really doing most of the work on coastal erosion and shoreline retreat. And one thing I'd like to probably start off saying is we're looking at this within the office, working with other departments, and we're looking at this from a regional perspective. And we're not trying to apply a one-size-fits-all across the state for every coastline. We want to understand what are the particulars of this area, the community, the infrastructure that's there, and then what's the appropriate set of tools for addressing the issues. And DOT will be a very important partner in that. If Justine, do you have any additional specifics to her question on Ka'ava?
Thank you, Vice Chair, for that question. Yes, coastal erosion is a very significant challenge that many of our agencies that we collaborate with are working on. Specifically in that area, we are participating in discussions with DOT relating to alternatives to shoreline hardening. But as we mentioned, the seawall issue is a big challenge. We need to protect the infrastructure. But we're looking at how nature-based solutions, in a very loosely defined term, can be integrated into those alternatives as well, where there are considerations relating to offshore reef as well as different types of materials that can be used for, solidifying and protecting the road. That's where we are with DOT specifically for that. We are mainly participatory and looking for opportunities to facilitate federal funds to come with different opportunities, as well as working with the university there.
Great, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Member Representative Kahalo.
I have a question for ADC.
Oh boy.
And while he's coming up, just mahalo to DBED for being here and for all you do to drive our economy upwards, creating jobs. It's really important. I would love to see what the economic impact is of just this department, because I think when you collate all the reports that you put together today, it'll be exciting to see how much that job creation is in totality of all the divisions here. That would be exciting data.
And thank you, and happy birthday as well. Thank you, Representative, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Your primary election. But Dr. Tian, can we put that together, please? And we can get that to you.
Thank you. But the ADC question is just related to, as you work with the Department of Ag and we work with our farmers, what are the plans ADC has to put farmers on our state available lands in the portfolio?
Okay, so, so I believe you have a, I'm not sure if you're gonna plan a tour with the chair to go out to see Galbraith. You know, I thought that was in.
Usually well.
Well, okay, so ADC has a specific footprint. Okay, mainly on Oahu, it's 2,000 acres. A lot of it is mainly on Oahu. On Kauai and Kalepa, we have approximately 6,000, and in Kekaha, we have approximately 12,000. Although much of the lands in Kekaha are sugar lands, former sugar lands on Mauka, which we haven't put too much agriculture in just because of erosion and everything. But the Mana Plain is very, very a good place. I mean, you know, Representative Morikawa can talk about the lands in Kekaha, very fertile, a lot of water, a lot of sun, so it's very perfect for doing. Kalepa is a lot of ranching, but we do have some agriculture. On Oahu, we have a lot of, about 3,000 acres. We've done about 1,200 already, and we have about 1,000 more to go, just more or less 1,200 more. But the demand for agricultural lands on Oahu is very, very high. So what we did was that we did go through the process for disposition all of the lands, and now we're in the process of putting those farmers on the land and everything else like that. So.
And what is the timeline to put farmers on those lands
Okay,
and,
so this
and
is,
lease those out?
Yeah. This is the second phase for Oahu, and we've already started. Some of them have started already. Part of it is that we're waiting to get purchase a well, and hopefully that will be done in a month or so or less. And then we'll do the connections for the waters for the second phase of our lands that excuse me, we're working on. So the first phase was Galbraith. We had water, we did that. Took us a long time. Second phase is that in more Waiawa, you know, below Heleamanu side like that. So we're trying to do that that portion right now. So we have one farmer who's already on there. Well, actually, we have two farmers that already started. Okay, and then they're in the process of getting their, you know, their conservation plans and everything else like that. So it's starting. Yeah.
And the funding for the well is in your budget proposal, or that was already appropriated?
It was already appropriated, so we're good on that. We just have to execute. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, members, we're running a little behind schedule, and it seems that a lot of questions are district specific. So we're gonna ask that now that you know who all the people are, that you contact them and bring them in for one-to-one conversations. We'd like to thank you for coming in. Members, just so you know, we had libraries that they were supposed to finish by 11:30 because they have another meeting after. But so we're gonna move right into them. We're gonna recess for like 1 minute to have you guys exit. Thank you. Recess. Okay, members, we're going to reconvene the Committee on Finance for our informational briefing. Unfortunately, the overlap we did pass it, and so we're going to have to reschedule libraries. We're probably going to do it pending their schedule. We're going to try and shoot for after Department of Human Services on Friday, or in that area. So we're gonna adjourn for today, and I apologize. I thought we could squeeze them in, but they actually went down to the Senate. There was an overlap. So, okay. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Recess.